Hi, and welcome back to Mike on Money. My name is Michael LeBlanc, Director and Senior Portfolio Manager at Canaccord Genuity Wealth Management. Thank you for joining us here today. We talk about everything financial and try to educate you a little bit on how you can improve your financial situation through planning and investing over time. Today we're specifically going to be talking about back to school and all the kids, good and bad things that are happening with schools this year, but in the long run, we want to help you plan for your kids' or grandkids' financial future. So we're going to talk about educational savings and how you can help them be prepared for when those bills come. Because let's face it, things are very different today. I myself have two kids, one in university, one in grade 12, about to embark onto his university next year. And the situation's very, very different these days. I mean, you've probably seen the comments in the news and the quotes just talking about the cost of universities, how they've risen. I know myself, long time ago, my first year in university, tuition was under $1,500 for 1 year. And depending on what school you go to and program you're in, today a university 1 year just tuition, not including residence or food or extracurricular, you're looking at pretty much anywhere between $6,000 to $7,000 all the way up to $15,000 to $20,000 if it's a very exclusive program. So, and that's per year, and those are Canadian universities. Obviously, if they're looking at foreign schools, that's going to cost even more. So, having some money put aside for them, I think is very important. If you've got grandkids, grandparents, you can participate in this. You can definitely help them out as part of your estate plan. You can have it take advantage of some government funding that we'll talk about. But also, keep in mind, in my own experience, we tell the kids, and I've certainly been hammering my kids, that I had to pay for my own university. I worked through the summers, save up enough for the winters. Might worked, 1 or 2 days a week during school to help pay for it. It's almost impossible for them to achieve that these days. Even if they're working, the starting out, certainly the first year, they probably making minimum wage, about $15 an hour. At most, if they save everything they make, they'll save between $4,000 and $6,000 to get them through the winter. And obviously, that's not even covering tuition. Never mind if they're going out of province or out of country for school. So, having some sort of assistance for them, if you can manage to do it, is really important. And in Canada here, we have something called the Registered Educational Savings Plan. It's a wonderful plan. It's been around for a long time. It was modified massively in the late 90s. That's really made it much more lucrative for parents and grandparents to use, and very, very flexible for the kids to take advantage of. And it's basically, for every dollar you put in, the government will top up 20%. So they'll give them grant money on top of every dollar that you put into the educational savings plan. Works much like an RSP. Except you don't get a tax deduction, you get the grant. So you put in $100 or $1,000, the government will put in $200 or $2,000 in grant. That can be invested in pretty much any investment that you would normally put into the RSP. Obviously, the types of investments you want to look at in there are important, especially depending on the children's age. If they're newborn or very young, they have anywhere from a 10 to 18 year time horizon before they're going to be drawing that money out. If you're starting a little bit later, they might have a shorter time horizon, and you need to take that into consideration when you're looking at the risk that you want to take in there. Now remember, all the returns, just like an RSP, are all tax-free. So every year that's compounding, those returns are compounding for the kids. It can build up to substantial savings so that when they go to school, you can withdraw it from there. And now, really important to know, when you go to do the withdrawals, there's great tax advantages. So, one, to qualify for the withdrawals, to get those tax advantages, your child or grandchild only needs to go to an accredited school. It can be a trade school, it can be a college. It can be I think the shortest it does is an 8-week program. It can be a foreign school if it's a full-time program. You can't do the part-time programs. I believe it has to be at least a two-year program for foreign schools. But if they're going to a U.S. university, for example, or UK or European university, that would fully qualify as well. And all they have to do is show proof of enrollment. It doesn't actually have to go towards tuition. So if they have to pay for rent, or if they need a car to commute back and forth, or whatever their expenses might be, they can withdraw the money on a very tax efficient basis while they're in school. And how that works is simple. For every dollar you put in, it comes out tax free, because that was after tax dollars. So there's no tax encumbrance on that. If you put in $1,000, you got the $200 grant, and that grew to $1,500. Your $1,000 comes out tax free back to you, and you can re-gift it to the child. The growth and grant portion, so in that example, that extra $500 comes out taxable to the child. Now, of course, when the kids are in school, they have a lot of extra tax deductions, and a lot of times they're not even earning their basic minimums. Basic minimum tax-free capital in Canada goes up every year. This year it's about, I believe it's around $13,000 they can earn before they pay tax. So they're really not being encumbered with tax. That money pretty much comes out tax-free with a little bit of thought and a little bit of plan in during that process to get it into their hands. So that's great. So you've been able to save the money, get the grant, have that compounding growth, and still take the money out on a tax-free basis once they go to school. And that can really help them year over year as they go through their university life. Now, again, it doesn't have to go specifically to tuition. So we do recommend taking it out on an accelerated basis. That just means don't leave it in there too long. Some people will not need it all in, say, year 1 or year 2 or year 3. And it can accumulate further and further. And by the time they get out to year 4, maybe they haven't used it all. Now they're out of school. Now withdrawing it can potentially be a tax issue. Not always, can be just something you want to be careful of. We recommend that for our clients that we work with, we do an accelerated withdrawal. Even if the kids don't need the money, we take it out. Remember, after the age of 18, 19 years old, you can open a tax-free savings account for them. We can just take those excess funds, put it in a tax-free savings account, still not triggering any taxation. It can continue to grow for them. If they don't use it through university, it can go back to you, or it can go towards maybe help them get started in life, whether it be a down payment on a condo, or just help them get on their feet as they start their new life after education. But it's a great way to give them that leg up as they're starting out. Now, if they don't go to school at all, or they don't do any secondary or post-secondary education, that's okay. You have a long time. Most depend on when you start the plan. You can take it out almost to the 30s. We usually say if they're 30 and they haven't decided to go to school yet, well, you might want to give up at that point. Now, at that point, there are options to roll it into your RSP tax-free if you have room. You don't get an extra deduction for that, but you don't trigger any of the taxation, and you don't trigger any of the grant clawbacks if that happens. So there is an opportunity to roll into your RSP down the road if the kids don't end up using it. You can have family plans, so multiple children on one plan, as long as they're blood or legal adoption related. If you're a grandparent and you have multiple sets of grandkids, you can set up multiple family plans. So one family plan for each set of grandkids is usually the most common way to do it. You just want to make sure that, at the end of the day, they have some options. Now, if you're a grandparent and you're putting that money in there, do be careful if the parents are doing their own educational plan, because there are lifetime limits as to how much can go into the plan for them. And if you go over, there are penalties. And there's also the grant money. So which plan gets the grant money? If you're a grandparent and the parents are claiming the grants, and you don't want to interfere with that, you can opt on your RESP to just be a shelter, but not claim any of that 20% grant money. Now, keep in mind, there is, for every year, there's a $500 limit for that year's contribution as far as grant dollars go. So $2,500 in, 500 grant money is the limit for that calendar year. You can catch up on previous calendar years. So if you've started a little bit late, those grant years aren't lost, but you can catch up on those and you can add that to future years. So for example, if you didn't do last year, you could put in 5,000 for this year, get 500 grant money for this year, plus the 500 grant money for last year, for a total of 1,000 in grant dollars for this in this calendar year. So you can catch up if you've fallen behind or if you've skipped a year along the way. You can catch up on those contributions and still claim all that grant. You can do that up until the year that the child turns 17. Once it's the year that they turn 17, that calendar year is the last year you can claim any grant dollars. Again, the plan can stay in existence. It stays tax sheltered for quite some time, but that's the last year you can go claim those grant dollars. So listen, I don't want to get into a ton more details because we can talk about, one more thing I do want to leave you with before we depart here today is if you're a U.S. person, meaning you have a U.S. citizenship, do not open an RESP. If your spouse is not a U.S. person, open it in their name. Don't put it in your name. Or maybe a grandparent is not a Canadian or U.S. citizen. Just make sure if you have that U.S. citizenship, you don't open an RESP. The U.S.-Canada Tax Treaty does not recognize RESPs or TFSAs, so it can really complicate things if you open one, and that tax sheltering is not going to be recognized by the IRS. It will still be recognized by Canada, which is your problem because you're not going to get any tax receipts from Canada, but the IRS will be looking to claim that income, that growth income in there. So just be very, very cautious if you have a U.S. citizenship. So the last thing I'm going to leave you with. With that, as always, visit us at mikeonmoney.com. You can find all information, our other videos, our social media. You can subscribe to our weekly report that includes up-to-date market information, things that are going on, and of course our weekly Tuesday live market update that we do every Tuesday at noon. If you have any ideas that you'd like us to review for you or any investment questions you have, reach out to us. Again, you can go to mikeonmoney.com. Love to hear from you there. Subscribe to our videos. We try to put one out once a week, plus our live Tuesday. So we're always happy to see you here. With that, remember, everything you hear on here is for educational purposes only. Do not consider it as advice or solicitation. Always reach out to us to ask us specific questions or seek your own professional advice before acting on any strategy. Thanks again, and we'll talk soon.